So in this video we're going to be talking about Philip in Greece. One of the most compelling questions about this period of Greek history is how it comes about that the king of Macedon in such a short period of time is able to become essentially the master of most of the Greek world. The thing that's striking about this is that it is a complex question. It has to do with all of the things that have happened in Macedon. It has to do with Philip's character. It has to do with all the things that the Greeks have done to break themselves down. But most of all, it's not simply a matter of conquest. The actual battles that take place are secondary to the machinations, the savvy involved on the part of Philip, and the opportunism that places him ahead of anyone else in this era, in this part of the world, as a politician, as a statesman, as a leader, as a king, as a conqueror. So how does this actually work? At the very beginning of Philip's reign, and we're still talking about just within the first few years of his having ascended to the throne, Philip is essentially able to, he reforms the military, he restores his relationships with the nobles, and reestablishes strength and stability in Macedon, and is able to take care of the problems posed by his immediate neighbors. So that the Illyrians and the Thracians are, and the Paeonians are relatively quickly neutralized as a serious problem, and over time they'll be completely conquered by Philip. But the problem of Thessaly is more difficult. Thessaly to the south, resists, the Macedonians' efforts at incursions, and has developed a fierce rivalry with the Macedonians, and so the problem becomes what exactly to do about Thessaly, and in particular the most important city in Thessaly, which is Parai. The opportunity to deal with this comes about in part because of an upstart, the sudden flaming of Phocis onto the Greek scene is a turning point in all these affairs. Phocis had long been a rival to Thebes, and Parai, the central city of Thessaly, had its own nemesis, its own enemy, Larissa, which the Macedonians had done everything that they could to support. And so Phocis, as it thrusts itself onto the Greek stage, allies itself with Parai, and makes immense trouble for everyone else, for the rest of Thessaly and Larissa, and for Thebes itself. And so Philip takes direct action in response to this, and sees this as a very obvious threat to Macedon. The Thessalians had almost conquered, subordinated Macedon in the period of crisis before Philip's ascension. And so it becomes absolutely vital to eliminate this threat. And so after a series of battles in which Philip realizes it's necessary to throw everything at this war, Thessaly is conquered. The Phocians are defeated, and Parai is taken and essentially removed from its role in Thessalian society through the intervention of Macedon's allies, Larissa. The Thessalian League thereupon gets together and puts Philip in a preeminent position amongst the Thessalian League. This essentially, between this alliance and this position on the Thessalian League, this puts Philip into direct control over Thessaly itself. This allows Philip to take advantage of the huge amount of resources available in Thessaly in terms of manpower, in terms of raw materials, and so forth. This greatly aids Macedon's standing. But Phocis is not done. The second of the three series of events that helped to bring Philip into preeminence over the Aegean world is the Third Sacred War, which has to do with Phocis's continued unbridled rivalry with Thebes. And so, Thebes had been in a position to, force Phocis into a subordination to them after the Battle of Leuctra, after they had demonstrated their military hegemony in defeating the Spartans. And so, as a result, Phocis is deeply infuriated by their being forced to subordinate themselves to Thebes. They don't have the money or the troops to fight Thebes itself, not after they had shown their strength and power at Leuctra. And so what Phocis is driven to do is to steal the treasury at the temple of Apollo at Delphi, and to melt down all of the gold and silver electrum and use that to pay a massive mercenary force to wage war against Thebes. Everybody is scandalized by this. Thebes calls for help. But the problem is that nobody is particularly happy about Thebes having gained a position of military hegemony within the Greek world. And so Sparta, Athens, Corinth, the other Greek cities refused to come to the aid of Thebes in order to prevent Thebes from getting any stronger. And so with nowhere else to turn, Thebes turns to Macedon, turns to Philip. Philip comes to Thebes' aid and uses his forces against Phocis. Naturally, Phocis exhibits a huge threat still to Macedon and to Macedon's control over Thessaly. But Macedon isn't interested in Thebes being any stronger either, and so Philip is capable of dissimilating with Thebes, is capable of creating a false alliance with them in order to pursue his immediate ends. So we can talk about Philip's diplomacy, we can talk about his savvy. But included in that has to be his unscrupulousness, and this comes into play in the third chunk of events that brings about Philip's mastery that we'll talk about in a moment. So as a result of the Third Sacred War, Macedon, in alliance with Thebes, defeats Phocis, and rather than have all of its men executed for the religious crime that had taken place at the Temple of Apollo, Phocis agrees to have its polis broken down into villages, and many of the peoples end up migrating throughout Boeotia, some of them to Thebes itself. But Macedon then turns the tables on Thebes through taking control of the Amphictyonic Council. The Amphictyonic Council is the religious governing council attached to Delphi, with the dominion over religious affairs throughout the immediate area, and this includes Thessaly, Boeotia, Attica, and so forth. The Amphictyonic Council conducts games and serves as as a connecting force between all of these disparate communities. It has a great deal of influence and standing. And as a result of Philip's control of Thessaly and his taking away the votes that Phocis had had, Philip is able to gain control of the Amphitryon Council. And so controlling the Thessalian League and the Amphitryon Council gives Philip immense influence over a vast chunk of the Greek mainland, putting the cities to the south, Thebes, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, on alert that they have allowed the wolf into the fold, and it is with the resources available to Philip, not only in his conquest to the north, into Europe, and his control of Macedon, but his control of the wealth of North and Central Greece as well. Dislodging him is now a question that is becoming more and more moot. The time has already passed for the eviction of Philip from Greece. With Thebes engaged in more and more difficulty, and ultimately at Mantinea, the death of Epaminondas, the driving force of Theban power, the defeat of the Spartans and the dispersal of the Helots, it's left to Athens to really face what is possible with regard to Philip. Athens is particularly invested in the problem of Philip because of Athens' interest in the northern Aegean post, and especially Chalkidike. Athens' strategic position at Chalkidike had been one of the deciding sparks in bringing about the Peloponnesian War, and now here again, Athens is in a position of needing to protect its vested interest in Chalkidike, and is unable to do so. There are two important Athenian allies that are involved in this, both of which Athens comes off the worst for. Philip had promised to Athens that it would turn over Amphipolis to Athenian control, as it had in the past, but it's again not in Philip's interest for Athens to have a strong presence in such a strategic location for trade and the movement of the military. Philip is very aware of the potential of the Athenian navy even at this late date, and wants to ensure that that Athens can't use either land or naval power against them from a launching place like Amphipolis. And so Philip breaks his promise to Athens and betrays his agreement by taking direct control of Amphipolis personally. The Athenian ally Olynthus had made an agreement with Philip of protection in return for safety. When Olynthus decides that that Philip can't be trusted after all of these betrayals, and restores its alliance to Athens, Philip once again besieges Olynthus and takes it, and in so doing demonstrates the superiority, as it had at Amphipolis, of the reforms that Philip had made in the Macedonian military, the Macedonian phalanx, and especially Macedon's siege-busting capability through the use of the catapult, through the use of other engineering tactics to break sieges. And so Athens is now in a position of looking on helplessly and realizing that Philip is a threat, and having lost the opportunity to do something about it. But there's more to it than that, because Athens is itself divided about the role that Philip and Macedon can have in the future of the Greeks. It's becoming more and more apparent to many people in Athens and the Greek world in general that the Greeks have torn themselves down, that they have mortally wounded themselves in the course of all these very petty and destructive wars of hegemony. That's the last several decades and going back into the Peloponnesian War have been nothing but Greece destroying itself and contaminating itself with less than pure ideas, with a loss of the drive to pursue the ideal society. And so, while there are firebrands like Demosthenes who are trying to rally the Athenians against the specter of Philip and the menace that he represents, a menace just as dangerous as the Persians. There are others like Isocrates who are saying things like, the Greeks are no longer capable of achieving their great goals, and in particular things like revenge against the Persians, taking back the lands of the Greeks and driving off the Persian enemy. And there is a difference between the Persians and the Macedonians. For somebody like Isocrates, the Persians represent true barbarity, but the Macedonians have embraced the Greek idea, and and are the home to the future of Greek thought and teaching in a way that, because of their muscular strength, because they are on the rise, they can do what the Greeks cannot. And so Demosthenes, partly because of the way that Athens is broken down in its economy, its resources are much reduced, and the funding that it sets aside for military matters is no longer a standard part of its budget in the way that it had been in the previous century. Demosthenes is unable to rouse the Athenians to the pitch that would be necessary to make a serious opposition to Macedon. Instead, what we end up with is an uneasy truce, in which essentially Macedon is gets all the things that it needs. Through this truce, Macedon is able to enforce, to take away any of the cards that Athens is holding, so that Athens is neutralized alongside Thebes and Sparta in resistance against Philip, and so. We finally get to the point where the Greeks realize that it's now or never, and the Greeks rally together for one last gasp, one last chance at fighting off the throat of the yoke of Macedon. But at the Battle of Chaeronea, Philip demonstrates that it's far too late for any of that. And, this lion monument still stands on the battlefield today as a demonstration of what Philip was able to do through the careful engineering of his position more and more further and further into Greece, so that by the time resistance came, it was essentially meaningless. And so even Philip's assassination, which comes so unexpectedly at the height of his power, is serves to cap off his period of accomplishment. And the main thing that results from this is that it is not Philip that undertakes the next stage of Macedonian expansion, but his son Alexander. We'll see how that plays out in the next set of videos. For now, that's that.